So James Gunn's Superman has recently hit theaters, and I have some thoughts. This movie is exactly what the people need, especially during these trying times. Long gone are the days of a mopey and sad Superman, and now we have a Superman that brings hope and life and freedom to the people. I'm glad to see Superman reflect his comic book origins in the sense that he's not some all-powerful messianic figure. Clark Kent is just a humble guy raised by two warm and loving people from the Midwest. I really enjoyed how wholesome and friendly this Superman was, taking the time to care about everyone around him, whether it be his enemies or even animals. This Superman saves squirrels. David did an excellent job in balancing the three sides of Superman. We have the Clark Kent persona when he's at the Daily Planet, where he's very bumbling and very nervous around certain folks. We have the Superman persona when he's in public or on camera. He's commanding, but still very nice and kind. And then you just have everyday, normal Clark Kent / Kal-El, who he actually is. And he's not too different. He's like a good blend between the two. He's nice and kind, but also confident in himself. Next, we have Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. I think Rachel has to be probably my second favorite portrayal of Lois Lane. Probably my favorite Lois Lane on film. My first, which is kind of biased, is Erica Durant's on Smallville. I think she was peak Lois just because of her feisty nature. And they're both feisty, but I think this Lois has a good balance of not being too overzealous about certain things. I'm glad they gave her something to do, and she was relevant to the plot. And honestly, if it wasn't for her, there were several times where Superman would be in trouble. I really buy the romance between Clark and Lois in this film. It's a good balance, and they understand each other. Granted, I kind of enjoy the fact that Lois kind of pushes Clark a little bit, in the sense that she's not just his girlfriend, but she's a dedicated ace reporter, and that's the character. You know, she's not gonna back down even to Big Blue. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor is hands down one of the most grimiest versions of Lex ever put to screen. Yes, Michael Rosenbaum is probably the most nuanced version, but we've had 10 years to grow with that character. And Clancy Brown, my God, you know, that's just the voice of Lex Luthor in animation. But specifically talking about Lex in film, Gene Hackman was good for the time. He was more about money than really his vendetta against Superman. And then the other two, Jesse Eisenberg and Kevin Spacey, they didn't really do it for me. Lex Luthor has to be methodical. He has to view himself as a god among men, even though that's exactly what he criticized Superman for. Because despite his great intellect, Lex is very much a hypocrite. He's conniving, he's sociopathic, petty to a T, studied Superman for 3 years and learned all of his fight moves in order to beat him to a pulp. That's just pure evil. You know, he even plays Russian roulette with a certain civilian and ends up killing the civilian. I thought that was just metal as hell. He has a great dynamic with David's Superman, where he's just smarmy and just gets in his face without being too loud about it. And he gives a great speech about comparing himself to the past geniuses like Galileo, but he feels envious towards Superman because here he is, what he considers himself God's gift to humanity, and this alien with godlike powers just ascends from the heavens and takes his throne, and he cannot stand for that, almost bringing himself to the verge of tears in terms of pure hatred. And that's just an A1 performance. But if you know Nicholas Holtz and anything like Skins and movies such as that, you know he can play grimy characters. The side characters in this movie are very interesting. I didn't feel like anyone didn't have enough screen time. There are some background characters that don't get lines, and I think it's balanced enough to where this world feels lived in. The Daily Planet crew is pretty interesting. I like Perry. I thought Perry was hilarious. Lombard was great. You rarely see Lombard in anything. I'm glad there's a Steve Lombard resurgence and stuff like My Adventures with Superman and now this. I'm glad, you know. Cat Grant, always good to see Grant. Oh my God, she was beautiful. And also she's going to be the voice of Chopper. So I thought that was pretty cool. But we got to talk about the GOAT of the Daily Planet crew, and that is my boy, Jimmy Olsen. Thank God. It's been so long since we get proper Jimmy Olsen representation. I mean, Jimmy is the man. I know people think Jimmy's just some, oh, gee golly, Superman, what are we going to do? Like he's just some lame sidekick, but Jimmy gets into some shit, okay? Jimmy is the type of character that basically he's Mordecai and Rigby from regular show, okay? Like if you know Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, or you've read the old Jimmy Olsen comics, you know he gets into wacky shenanigans all the time. So him being a ladies man, I mean, this is the guy who's dated Supergirl, he's dated Livewire, he's dated Silver Banshee. I mean, he pulls, okay? Jimmy Olsen pulls. So James Gunn incorporates that into the movie, and it becomes a central plot point. And you know, let's just say without Jimmy, we wouldn't be as far as we've gotten. I thought the inclusions of the Kents were very interesting this time around, making them not to say simple, but just nice, down-to-earth farm folk. You know, their farm isn't massive, isn't this big, crazy thing like in Smallville or some of the other movies where you just see them with large amounts of land and things of that nature. But you just have a small farm with people who actually look and sound like they're from, you know, the Midwest, and it's just nice. They're nice. Martha had a strong accent. John looks like he works the land, and they give great advice to Clark, and you can tell that he was loved with all of their hearts. And you can tell where Clark developed his character because they're just very wholesome people. All right, let's talk about the Justice Gang. It's a work in progress, okay? We know eventually they're going to become the Justice League. And granted, since this is a Maxwell Lord, there's just kind of their version of Justice League International. We didn't really get to see Maxwell Lord all too much. I think he has a small cameo on the TV when Lex Luthor gets arrested eventually. I thought it was good. I thought all three of them did a great job. Granted, out of the three, Hawkgirl was the least developed, but you can kind of tell her character. She was not no nonsense, but she was a vibe. She was the kind of like battle-ready warrior who didn't really give two shits. Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, is just perfect. I'm so used to Nathan Fillion as Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, that I had some stipulations about him being Guy Gardner. I know he could play an asshole. I've seen him play assholes in things like Castle and things like that. But in my brain, when I hear his voice, I hear Hal Jordan. So him pulling off Guy Gardner is just perfect. You know, he was punchable, but still likable, which is how you would summarize Guy Gardner in general. And Eddie just did a great job as Mr. Terrific. I mean, Arrow really just shit on that character. I've been a fan of Mr. Terrific since, you know, Justice League Unlimited back in the day. You know, so I kind of know who I kind of knew who Mr. Terrific was gonna be going into this movie, but he had the sauce, man. He was perfect. And if you want to read any Mr. Terrific books, I would highly recommend The Terrifics. It's like a Fantastic Four pastiche, but it is really good. In terms of the vibes and tones of this movie, it was very much, like everyone's been saying, a comic book come to life. You can see the inspirations of different comic book storylines blended in. Visually, it felt a lot like Superman the Animated Series, with a little bit of the architecture and futuristic vibes of both Superman Returns, but something like A City of Tomorrow. I like the references to Smallville in terms of things like Luthor Corp instead of Lex Corp. You can tell that this shares a lot of DNA with All-Star Superman, because that story takes place over several periods of time in Superman's life on his final days on Earth. Contrasted to this, where the intentions of this movie originally was supposed to be certain days in Superman's life. And you kind of can tell that because it jumps from point A to point B to point C. And you can tell that there were supposed to be title cards in between the movie. But the changes that James made were for the best. I think this movie's not perfect, but it's damn near close. After years and years of just grim, dark Superman and evil Superman and just people not really taking Superman seriously or just thinking of Superman as this all-powerful God, we finally have a proper portrayal of Superman. This and My Adventures of Superman nail Superman's character on the head. He's a nice guy, and there's nothing wrong with having morally nice people. That is Superman. If you don't like earnest people like Captain America and Superman, then that's just your prerogative. Superman is just not the character for you. Don't try to change him into something that he's not. A lot of people's problems is that they want Superman to be the ultimate power fantasy and not an actual character who doesn't just stand there when people are in danger or, you know, lets people die due to a dirty bomb in a courtroom. He takes the time to save everyone, and if he can't save everyone, it utterly destroys him inside. And that's who Superman is. He's a man of the people, not one people. He has no allegiance to one nation. He doesn't care about your creed. He doesn't care about your sexuality. He doesn't care about your race. If he sees a person in trouble, he will help. And there's a scene I love where all the children are coming up to Superman after he just saved them from the kaiju, and you can see him just take the time to make sure everyone's okay. It just warms my heart. And at this point, we're stepping into spoilers. So overall, I give this movie 8 out of 10. But for those of you who want to hear my spoilers, here we go. There is a scene in the movie that's not really a spoiler. You see it in the trailers. It very much touches on the conflicts that are going on in the Middle East, but it portrays Superman very accurately. He doesn't need to worry about jurisdiction because he doesn't answer to anyone. He's a man of the people. And to the point where why we need characters like Superman is because they inspire hope. And there's the scene of the boy lifting the flag into the air and calling out for Superman. Granted, Superman is unable to go because he's occupied with dealing with Lex Luthor's shenanigans, but it's that hope that he has in the face of danger. He can inspire not only himself, but his people. And heck, even the Justice Gang end up seeing that little boy and that flag and that symbol, and they get it. They go, oh, we need to step in. This is why Superman is important. So let's talk about things that slightly threw me off. I love the camera work in this movie. The trailers did not do this movie justice. I think the color grading is good on screen. The lighting, visually this movie's nice. Yes, you can say what you will about the Snyder films. They're grim dark. I think Snyder slightly does things a little more eye-catchingly, but James Gunn did a great job in just portraying Superman as this warm, awe-inspiring person without making it look like he's a god. So there's a scene where he's saving a woman on a bridge with a falling building, and he's just standing there silhouetted by the light of the sun, and you see him, but he doesn't look threatening. It's just like, wow, he's just a pillar of light in the darkness, and it's just beautiful. Now, like I was saying, the problems I have with this movie, I think portraying the L's and Kryptons as conquerors, it's a little jarring. And granted, they're not always the best people. I mean, in Smallville, they were very flawed, but flawed doesn't necessarily mean evil. I was waiting for a part of the movie where they were going to reveal the message from Krypton was fabricated, but they never do. So for all intents and purposes, Jor-El and Laura kind of look like assholes. But the biggest problem I have is that towards the end of the movie, surprise, surprise, we get to see Supergirl. And, if Supergirl's here, then why the hell didn't she just explain to Clark? Granted, she was probably out of the solar system. She was probably going to a solar system with a red sun, like Superman tells us. So if you want to know what's going on with Supergirl and you're kind of confused why she's acting like that, go read Superman, Woman of Tomorrow, which is going to basically be the DNA for this next Supergirl movie. Overall, I'd give this movie an 8 out of 10. It was really good. This is my favorite Superman movie. You can fight me in the comments. If you agree or disagree, let's get a dialogue going. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know the next time we upload. And thanks for watching.